and they're peeing and pooing. Is that the camera? Hey camera, what are you doing here? Oh, I know, you're here for part 3 of living and teaching overseas, the China edition. Road opening. As I mentioned, this is part 3 of my series of living and teaching overseas. We're now in rural China. Well, actually right now we're in Chiang Mai. We're at a temple on the beautiful Ping River. I'll put a link down below where this temple is. As I mentioned in part 2 of this series, I made a very adventurous journey from the airport in Jinan to this little town called Binzhou. Click here for the playlist for this series. It stands on its own, but I think it's kind of cool to catch up on the 2 previous episodes of this. I was all moved into my apartment, met my 2 roommates, met the Chinese staff, met some of the other teachers, and everyone seemed really nice, and I was all excited about my new adventures ahead. I believe I started teaching a week after I moved in, so I was able to explore the city, hang out with the people, you know, that I will be working with, and just get a general vibe of my new environment. If you didn't have a old black VW car, the main ways to get around the city was public transportation through a bus, they had taxis, people had motorbikes, and of course bicycles. I picked a bicycle as my form of transportation. Here's a picture of me with my medium-sized frame looking very big on this little bike. Actually, in the 3 short months I stayed in this little city, I had 3 bikes stolen. The first one was provided by the school, and the other 2 that I bought, I think were around 20, 25 bucks used. So with this bicycle came the freedom of being able to explore this city on my own. And you know, get to talk to the people, get to see the sights, and also I was able to explore my newfound love of street photography. With this newfound freedom, I was introduced to a very interesting word called Laowai, which means foreigner in Chinese. So you'd be walking along the street and you hear Laowai, Laowai, parents tapping their kids on the shoulder, pointing at me, and kids yelling Laowai, Laowai. So I was a Laowai. Actually, people would stop to get my autograph. People would even stop to get pictures taken with me, like I was some kind of celebrity. There's also this really weird thing that would happen. I only did it a couple times, just out of embarrassment, but people would ask for my phone number. They didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak Chinese, but we were able to somehow exchange phone numbers, and around 7, 8 at night, I'd get a call from some dude who didn't speak a lick of English, and he'd be like, I don't know what he was saying. So like I said, I only did it once or twice. So after that, I told people I didn't have a phone number. I just played dumb. And if they spoke English and was able to ask for a phone number, I would say, yeah, sorry, I don't have a phone number, or I don't know what it is. As I mentioned in the last video, I didn't speak a lick of Chinese, and English wasn't readily spoken in this town. So when I was on my bike or on foot, I'd always make sure I had a English to Chinese dictionary. And also I had, you know, like common phrases that I'd use written down, like to where I was able to recite them. And also, you know, you just pick up numbers, and you do pick up those common sayings. And a lot of times people understood what you're saying. I think the locals were so excited to have a foreigner in this town. There wasn't too many foreigners around, so I think they would try extra hard to understand you, or they probably didn't understand me, but they just wanted to, you know, have a conversation. So they're like, oh yeah, I understand what you're saying. Traveling around the city, you saw some really foreign, really crazy things. Like, man, one of them that really stood out was you'd see like little kids, boys and girls, probably I'd say under 3 years old. They'd have a slit in the back of their pants, and if they had to go poo or pee or whatever, the parents would just have the kids like squat down and take a dump or urinate. It's pretty crazy. remember this one time I was like waiting to cross the street, and I heard like the sound of like liquid hitting the concrete, and I look over and there's this grandmother holding her little kid or her little grandchild like this, and they're peeing and pooing, and the grandmother had this crazy smile on her face, like gesturing to me, to her grandkid, that Lawai, Lawai. And I remember thinking, I'm like, wait, you're sitting there in public at 11:30 in the morning, all these people around, this little kid's like and on the ground, out in the open, and the main thing you can concentrate on is that there's a foreigner in your town. Another thing you'd see at night, like when I was riding my bike around, you'd see like a fire off in the distance. And no, it wasn't an oil fire. It was people, they'd be burning rubbish. So you'd smell like the smell of like burning plastic. It was pretty crazy. So the public behavior was a lot different than what I was used to back in the States. Standing in line, standing in a queue, forget it. People would be pushing, so you had to be like more aggressive if you're standing in line for something. But on the other side of the coin, people are really nice, because, you know, like if I'd go on a bus, like younger people would give up their seat. They'd be like, okay, this guy's an elder, or he's a visitor to my country, or he might be a teacher. So there was also a lot of respect too. Or if I'd be at a restaurant or a store or something, and I would like forget my bag or forget, you know, my headphones or something like that, 5 minutes later you get a tap on the shoulder, and it'd be the shopkeeper returning the items to you. So, you know, you met some really honest people who went out of their way to be honest and not, you know, scam people. But on the other side of the coin again, you go to a shop, you'd pay, of course, the foreign price. You'd find that in a lot of countries. You'd find it in Thailand, but it was very, very common in China. So if you like go out for like a nice dinner with some, you know, locals that you'd meet, you know, you'd want to split the bill, or maybe you'd want to pay because they might have helped you out with something. They would insist on paying. I mean, I don't know how many times I would stand in a restaurant with like a middle-aged Chinese woman. I'm sitting there playing tug of war trying to get the check, and they wouldn't have it. And if I would have paid, they would have paid the cashier, and the cashier would have returned my money to me. So the generosity that you'd get from people in this little town was beautiful. It was very nice, very welcoming. You'd meet people like at a restaurant or someplace, they'd invite you to spend time with their family making dumplings in their home. Well, my week of exploring and just hanging out was over, and it was time for me to get to work. So I met up with the Australian teacher, the one I was replacing, and she showed me the ropes. Basically, the rundown was there wasn't a whole lot of materials offered at this school. The levels of the students were sporadic, so it was basically they just wanted foreign teachers to show up for the parents to see these foreigners, and they didn't really care about teaching the kids English. It's just all about presentation and appearance. I worked probably like 4 or 5 days a week, probably for 3 to 4 hours. I would either teach in this language school, so it would be like a small group, no more than 9 kids, probably 6 to 12 years old, or I would teach in a government school that usually didn't have AC, and it was really hot in this town, and it would be like 40 to 50 students, probably 10 to 14 years old. I would teach them, you know, colors, you know, body parts, stuff like that, like common conversation. I'm sure, especially in the government school, that a lot of students were lost and went way over their head. It was hard to keep track of them. But, you know, you did the best you could. I was a pretty new teacher at that time, so yeah. But I did the best I could. I took the job very serious. They were really excited to have a foreign teacher. A lot of them weren't exposed to foreigners, so a lot of them would listen. They would ask me questions best they could about, you know, my country back home, and yeah, there were some really nice kids there. So there are other teachers in this town. I mean, there was other English schools, so I'm not just talking about my school. My school is pretty small, but yeah, the countries that they came from varied. Like some, a couple from Australia, a lot from the African continent, like Cameroon, Ghana, South Africa, Egypt. There was, you'd bump into the Filipino teachers. So yeah, you met a very different level of experience, background, education in this little city of foreigners. Chickens fighting. So the monthly pay rate for native speakers was around 4,500 RMB, which is around $630 a month. And for non-native speakers and teachers of color, it was around 3,500 RMB, which is, I'd say, roughly $490 a month. The prejudice and racism in this town, and I'd say kind of Asia in general, is pretty jarring for someone coming from, the West. Because a lot of the Chinese parents, they wanted their kids to be taught by, of course, I understand the native speaker thing, but they really preferred like a Caucasian teacher. So it was like really common in this town for the teachers to run off to like, Shanghai or Qingdao or Beijing to get, higher paying jobs. I mean, you can make double or even triple in these other cities. And there's a lot more stuff to do. Hold on. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to leave. Yeah, there's a funeral coming. Okay, see you in our location. Don't want to be disrespectful. There's a lot of people here in black, so, all right. There wasn't a lot to do in this town. So yeah, I mentioned that people would run off because of the pay, and this town didn't have a ton going on. There wasn't, like cool temples, or there wasn't like Shaolin monks like, kicking each other in the head or anything. It was all very industrial, very country, and yeah, there wasn't a whole lot going on. But I was only there for a couple months. I loved it. I had a good time, but I wouldn't have been able to stay there full term. So what did I do for fun? I would take pictures, as I said. I would play a lot of pool, just hang out with friends, do stuff like that. And when you're hanging out with friends in China, you're probably going to be drinking a lot of liquor. And my liquor of choice was Laoshan beer. It was this local beer in this province. And, people would tell me at the time, like locals and foreigners that were living there, they had to be careful of some of the beers, that a lot of it had like formaldehyde, or it was like copied beer. It wasn't like the stuff that came from the brewery. It was something that was made locally in someone's bathtub. They put it in a bottle and they would sell it to people, which could have been why I was sick a lot. I mean, I'll get into that in the next video. I can't believe I have a next video. I think this is going to be a little bit of a long series. All right, I only spent 4 months in China, 3 months in this little town, and I barely touched the surface of me living there. And this is my second 10+ minute video on the subject. So, you know what? I'm gonna leave it till the next video in the series, which I'm not sure. I have a big announcement coming up about my channel, especially in October. So it might be throughout the months that I finish this series. But I think the reason why this video is taking so long is that my time in China, 2005, rural China, really impacted me. So I just absorbed a lot throughout the years, and I hope I'm not dragging this out way too long. Please comment below. Have you been abroad? Have you had like a really impactful experience living or visiting a place abroad? Have you ever taught overseas? Do you have the desire to? Do you know anyone? Please let me know. I love a conversation. If you like this type of content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. If you want to get notifications on stuff like this, click that bell. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are, peace.